Hello students, let's do the next problem. The question says, factor the expressions given in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So let's highlight the word factor, right? And my problem is 10r squared minus r minus 2. So what's the first thing that we do? Yes, we're going to write down the standard form right below the problem. So I'm going to write down ax squared plus bx plus c. Remember, this is to help us identify a, b, and c. So a has a value of 10. Yes. B, yes, b looks like has no number, right? But we agree that anytime that there's no number, we are going to write down a 1. So that will be a negative 1. And how about c? Yes, it will be a negative 2. So now that I identify A, B, and C, we are going to use the X method, which we've been doing it, right? So let me give you a couple of seconds for you guys to draw the X and the table. Do you have the table ready? And the X? Okay, so let's continue. If you remember, we're going to do the same thing. I still need to find the product of A times C, which is 10 times negative 2, and I do get a negative 20. Opposite of that, I still need to write the b, which is a negative 1. And on the lower side, if you remember, I write my a's, right? A in this case, it's a what? 10, yes. So we put a 10 on both of them, okay? So now we're gonna go to the table and we're gonna work on the table. So I need to find the product for what number? I need to find the product for negative 20. And at the same time, I need to find the sum of negative 1. Okay, so let's start with the product of negative 20. So what I'm going to do is I need to start with a 1. And I also need to remember that since I'm looking for a negative 20, one of my factors needs to be negative. So I'm going to start with a negative 1. We always start with a 1, remember? So in this case, will be negative 1. Negative 1 times 20. Yes, I get a negative 20. I can do the same factors, but now 20 is the one with negative sign. And I do get a negative 20, right? What about 2? Can I find a number that I multiply by 2 that will give me a negative 20? Yes, negative 2 times 10. Very good. I get a negative 20. But again, I need to change the signs, right? So I'm going to say 2 times negative 10. I still get a negative 20. How about 3? 3 times what gives me a negative 20? No, right? There's no whole number. How about 4? So we are going to say negative 4 times 5. Very good. I get a negative 20. But now I'm going to change, and the 4 will be a positive 4, and the 5 will be a negative 5. I still get a negative 20. And I know that I'm done because think about 4 and 5. 4 and 5 are very close to each other, so I'm done with my factors for negative 20. So now I'm going to move to the right. I need to find the sum of negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to start with negative 1 plus 20. What do I get? A positive 19. I'm going to do the second one, but now the 20, it's negative. So my answer is negative 19. Nope, That's not close to what I'm looking for. Let's go on to the next one. Negative 2 plus 10 gives me an 8. 2 plus, now the 10 becomes negative, and it's negative 8. So not there yet. What about the next one? Negative 4 plus 5. Yes, I get a positive 1. It's kind of close, right? But I need negative. So let's do the last one. 4 plus negative 5. I get a what? Negative 1. And I'm thinking that you guys are saying what? Bingo! Yes, that's what I was looking for, right? So I was looking for the product of negative 20, and I was looking for the sum of negative 1, which I got already. So those are my factors, right? So I'm going to write down A4, and I'm going to write down a negative 5. Okay? So now I want you to think about this. We are not done yet, right? I still need to consider whether I can simplify or not. That's very important for us to do. Simplify means that I'm going to look at 4 and 10 as a fraction and decide whether I can simplify that or not. So, can I find a number that divides 4 and 10? Yes, both of them can be divided by 2. So 4 divided by 2 gives me a what? 2. 10 divided by 2 gives me a 5. Very good. What about on the other side? So don't worry about the negative. Think about 5 and 10. Can I divide both of them by the certain number? Yes, I can divide both of them by 5. So what's negative 5 divided by 5? Negative 1. 10 divided by 5? 2, right? I needed to extend the line, sorry. So now you gotta remember that we agree that the one with the x is the coefficients where the a's are. So this carries the x. Kind of tiny over here. So what's the next thing to do? I hope you remember we highlight them, right? So I'm gonna highlight that and this one. Now look at how I am not highlighting the first factors that I found. I'm actually highlighting my simplest form, right? So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna write down my factors. So my first factor is 5x plus 2. Second factor is 2x minus 1. Okay, so these are my factors. I don't want you to finish the problem here. I want you to take one more step, and I want you to actually prove or check for me, however you want to think of, right? So I want to check if it's true that those are the factors. So we're going to start by writing my factors, right? So I'm going to write down 5x plus 2. And the second factor is 2x minus 1. So what we're going to do next is we're going to draw the box. Okay, so let me give you a couple of seconds for you guys to do that. Let's finish up the box. So I'm going to do my first binomial, right? And the first term is 5x. Second term is a positive 2. Next binomial is 2x minus 1. So first term is 2x and negative 1. So let's multiply. 5x times 2x gives me a 10x squared. 2 times 2x gives me a 4x. And 5x times a negative 1 gives me a negative 5x. And 2 times a negative 1 gives me a negative 2. What we do next is we're going to rewrite the terms from the box, right? So let's write it down. So I'm going to write down 10x squared plus 4x minus 5x minus 2. And now I want you to consider whether you can combine like terms. And the answer is yes, we can combine 4x and minus 5x. Notice how 10x squared cannot be combined with anything. Therefore, I'm going to bring it down. Now, I'm going to think and decide, what do I do with 4x and minus 5x? Well, think about this. 4 is positive, 5 is negative. So 4 minus 5 gives you a negative 1, right? So we say minus 1x. Minus 2, bring it down. I can rewrite my answer because if you remember, that coefficient of 1 is not needed, right? So I'm going to write it without the 1. Just so that you can see that now my answer is like my original problem. Okay? What's the difference between the answer 10x squared minus x minus 2 and the original problem 10r squared minus r minus 2? I hope that you think, and I hope you decide that the only difference is basically the variable, right? Because variables, remember, they do not matter. We can use any variable that I want. But since my problem has the variable r, we will use the variable r in my factors. So we're going to come back over here to the problem where we found the factors, and I want you to rewrite it. So my answer will be 5 instead of x. We're going to put an r plus 2. And on the second one, we're going to replace x also with the variable r. And now that looks better for me, right? So right here, we're going to make like a little note. We're going to write down that answer also again. So instead of x, we're going to write an r. We're going to replace it with an r. So my answer will be 10 r to the second power minus r minus 2. All I did is I replaced the variable x with the r. Now I can see that they actually match.